Okay, right, so morning everyone, welcome to today's webinar. So this is a joint webinar between ourselves at Bristol City Centre BID, Visit West and Business West. So those of you who haven't met me as yet, I'm Paula Redcliffe, I'm the Business Liaison Manager for Bristol City Centre BID. I'm joined by my colleague Tom Swithenbank, and we've also got representatives here, James Morvan from Bristol City Council and Rebecca Watson. Still a few people jumping in, so I'm going to take this quite slowly to make sure that everybody gets here in time. Just wanted to cover off a little housekeeping. We are recording this webinar for people that weren't able to attend that wanted further detail, so please be aware of that. If you have any questions to ask to any of us, then please would you put them in the chat box, and what I'll do is I'll pick them up at the end. There'll be a Q&A session at the end, so once James has done his presentation, I can pick those up for you then. Obviously you can ask any of us questions, doesn't just have to be James, so just please make sure you put them in the box. I'm just going to give it another couple of seconds because more people keep appearing. Oh, hello, Sandra.
Hello. Having a good morning?
Having a great morning. Wasn't expecting to see you there. Okay. Right, I think we're just about all here. We can obviously let a few more people in as we go along. If you could ask everyone to make sure that you're on mute for the presentation so that it doesn't affect James's presenting skills. And James, I will pass over to you now to let us all know what's happening with the webinar, with the Clean Air Zone, and see what we need to do next.
Okay, thanks a lot. Right, so I'll share my slides now. So I'm the engagement lead for the Clean Air Zone. I sit in the transport team, but this is very much also a public health initiative. So what I'm going to do, I've just got about 12 slides. I'm not going to dwell long on this. The idea is to give plenty of time for any questions that you have. Okay, so some of the basics, if you're not aware already. So we have a legal requirement to get cleaner air in Bristol, and that's all about the NO2 levels, so nitrogen dioxide. So we've been mandated by government to put in a clean air zone. We have had quite a few delays. One of the delays was through the COVID period, but we now have a start date, which is November the 28th. So it's very much a looming date. It's coming very soon. So this is all about public health. Even now, we still have some misconceptions out there that this is a climate change initiative. So we might get some benefits to CO2 and greenhouse gases, but this is actually all about public health. It's about the air that people breathe. It's about the health impacts that people have. Okay, so in terms of where we are, in terms of the impact that the Clean Air Zone is going to have. So from data, it's about 4 years old now, data showed that over 70% of all vehicles on the road are already clean enough, which means they won't be impacted, won't be charged at all. We're projecting that's going to be over 80% before the zone comes into place. We've been really closely monitoring Birmingham, who've got the same type of zone as us, and they had similar kind of figures, slightly higher. So we are talking about a minority of vehicles. It's the older, more polluting vehicles which will be charged. So I won't dwell too much on this. I think people are quite familiar with the health impacts of clean air, but it's just worth emphasising, this is why we're doing it. So the more vulnerable people in society and those with pre-existing conditions are the ones that tend to be impacted the most. Also, people that live closer to busy roads often tend to be they have lower income and are less likely to drive or own a car themselves. So there's an equity issue here as well. Okay, so this is a map of the zone. So cleaner zone, it's going to cover all of the city centre and a little bit beyond. So just to talk through a couple of points, the zone does go south of the river, so that includes Coronation Road. Inset A on the left is showing that a bit of the Portway is included, and also Brunel Way, so that's the elevated section of the road, is included. Although you can drive underneath Brunel Way, sort of east to west, without entering the zone. Inset B is showing if you come down the M32 and then down Newfoundland Way, you can turn left before entering the zone. This also means that you can access Cabot Circus car park using the side entrance as well. Now, the design of the scheme is to help us get to compliance as soon as possible, and what you'll see is really most of those kind of journeys that are north to south, you are going to be going through the zone. So the main message is make sure that you're checking your vehicles, make sure that you have as compliant vehicles and fleet as possible. Okay, so this slide just tells you which vehicles are compliant and which aren't. So you have petrol on the left, diesel on the right. The cloud is showing the levels of nitrogen dioxide. Okay, so it should be quite clear visually why we're being stricter with diesels. So if you've got a petrol, if you are 2005 onwards, that's from Euro 4, the vehicle will be compliant. Okay, so quite a lot of people have been surprised by that. You can potentially have a sort of 17-year-old car which could still be compliant, but it's all because of the lower levels of NO2 which are being emitted. Diesels, we're stricter, so that is you must have a Euro 6 to be compliant. So in terms of vans, buses, HGVs, they're more impacted because there's far fewer petrol versions on the market, and that's reflected in the financial support that we have. Okay, and then just to reiterate as well, if you do have questions as we go, just pop them in the chat, and we can try and answer them as we go, or we can come to them at the end. Okay, so exemptions. We do have some exemptions to give people a bit more time to upgrade their vehicles. Nearly all of the exemptions are temporary, and they only run until the end of March. So that is people that live in the zone, low income workers in the zone, that's less than 26k per year, patients to the hospitals around the BRI, and blue badge holders. There's also a separate exemption if you're applying for financial support and you can evidence that there's a delay on your vehicle, then you can get a further exemption there as well. There's a few small national exemptions. The main one is the disabled tax class, and about 1/3 of all blue badge holders will have the disabled tax class. So I would suspect, in terms of this group, I don't know all of your businesses, but it's probably the low-income worker that might be most relevant, and anyone can apply for that. They just need to show that they're entering the zone with a letter. Okay, so there is the vehicle checker. If I would recommend everyone to have a look at that. If you haven't already, what you can do is check individual vehicles. Sorry, you can check individual vehicles, or you can do a bulk upload of a fleet of vehicles. So I recently put 1,000 vehicles through this checker to find out if they're compliant or not. It's also the same portal. This is all run by government, where you pay for the charge as well. So you need to be really careful and make sure that you are paying for the correct city. We're already seeing lots and lots of people drive into Birmingham or Bath and pay for the wrong zone. Also, you need to make sure you're paying for the correct day. So if you have a non-compliant vehicle, you have up to 6 days in advance if you want to pay in advance, or 6 days after the time that you drive in, and you need to select the day of travel to pay. Now you can set up a business account where you have direct debit, but you still need to apply and pay for each entry into the zone. So it's not such an issue if you're doing it for yourself or you manage 1 or 2 vehicles. It starts becoming quite an admin burden though, if you have a really large fleet. So some fleet managers, 100+ vehicles, they need to be really careful with this. So a lot of people are looking at fitting telematics so that they get reports showing if any non-compliant vehicles have gone into the zone, so they can manage this properly. What we won't have is, unlike the London congestion zone where you can sort of preload credit and then it comes down as you drive in and out, we won't have that option. So it is a bit more admin heavy. Okay, so we do have support, and hopefully a lot of you are already aware of this. We've already applied. We've already had about 7,000 applications, but we still have available funding. So the applications will remain open if you still need to get your application in. So this kind of shows you the total amount that we can provide for any individual vehicle. At the moment, we're funding businesses with up to 5 vehicles, but if we have money left, and we're applying to government for more money as well, then we'll be able to open that up beyond 5. So typically speaking, for an LGV, if that's a van, you can get a total of £6,000 support, which could be a combination of a grant or a loan. For a car, it could be up to £2,000. The way the funding works, it has very much been weighted towards businesses and vans in particular, because it is a bit more expensive to upgrade to get to a compliant van, because you don't have those older petrol options. So the other thing we want to do, we don't just want to try and encourage people to go from an older diesel to a slightly newer diesel. We are trying to encourage as much sustainable travel as possible. So we have a really good package of funding from government. It's a couple of £1 million that can be used over the next 3 years. We've already issued over 1,000 vouchers to people since June. So it's things like bus tickets. You can get up to £50 bus tickets. You can get bike loans. We'll train you how to cycle on the road. We've got Voy scooter credit, also £50 of car club credit as well. This is open to anyone who lives or works in Bristol, so it's a really good one to promote to businesses. There's also some dedicated funding for businesses. So these are business grants up to 15k. Now that has to be match funded. If you're looking for something a bit smaller, we do have discretionary grants of, I think it's £250, which don't need to be match funded. As long as you can make the case that this is supporting sustainable transport, then we can have a chat and we can potentially support you. So in the past, people have used the funding for EV chargers. They've used them for cargo bikes, cycle parking, showers, that kind of thing. But we're also open to any more innovative suggestions to help you reduce your impact. Another thing that it's just worth mentioning, we've had some further funding through the Clean Air Zone for freight consolidation. Effectively, it's about getting your deliveries to come in and dropped off outside of the zone. Then they can be shuttled in using e-cargo bikes or electric vans. If anyone's interested, come and have a chat with me. We can potentially offer free trials. So Zedify are one of the partners we've funded, but there's lots of different operators out there. We've also got an electric vehicle centre of excellence. So by the end of this year, we'll have 50 electric vans. We're already loaning them out, lots of different types of different electric vans. You can trial them for a month or two to see if it works for your business. You can still sign up, although there is quite a big waiting list now. If you want to help promote this, get it out to your stakeholders, your staff, your suppliers, we do have a comms toolkit as well, which we can circulate. So just a bit about the communications. It's always a challenge to get the message out to, it's not just to the city, it's to the wider region and beyond. And I think there probably has been a little bit of an issue nationwide with the clean air zones because there hasn't been a big national advertising scheme. But we have been doing quite a lot of comms. So in the post now, about half of these have been delivered. I think there's 250,000 postcards going out to every premises in Bristol and a little bit beyond Bristol. The DVLA are going to be sending out letters from this week. So they're capturing non-compliant vehicles that are driving in. So using the existing cameras, and they'll be sending out letters saying, just a bit of a reminder, the clean air zone is coming. If you drive in after the launch date, you will need to pay. There's a bit more coverage coming out through the press. We're doing ads across the region. We have billboards. We have advertising on petrol pumps. And we're doing a bit of a wider comms push to try and reach people within an hour's drive of Bristol as well. I would say one of the really big challenges we have in terms of comms is those bigger events. So where we have large events or where we have, say, conferences, people coming from quite far away who may just not be aware of this at all, that's where we really need to be working with stakeholders and with businesses to really kind of push that message out. Okay, so this is my last slide. Really, it's just encourage you, go onto our website, check all the details, check your vehicles, make sure you're familiar with how to pay. Just remember, you're not going to be getting an invoice if you drive in with a non-compliant vehicle. We need people to be proactive. They have to pay up front. Okay, so one of the big issues we found with Bath and Birmingham clean air zones is in the first couple of months, they had very, very low rates of pay compared to what they were expecting because people were driving in thinking they would get, an invoice in the post, and that isn't going to happen. People need to pay in advance. Okay, I think that's all the main messages I wanted to cover. So okay. I'll stop sharing.
Thanks, James. What I'll do now is I'll pick up questions that are in the chat box. So Leanne is saying that she's got a diesel car, a non-compliant vehicle. She works in the city centre, lives in Bedminster Down, so most of her journeys are going to be picking up penalty charges. They've also got several sites in Bristol. You're from Loungers, I believe, Leanne, if I remember right. So got several sites in Bristol, and PAS are going to be passing, lots of different penalty charges, lots of cameras. How are they going to overcome that as a business?
Yeah, so I guess that there's a few different things there. So any of your own vehicles that your business own, you can apply for financial support. Okay, so even if you do that today, there'll be a couple of weeks for us to process it, but there is an exemption which you can then apply for those vehicles while you're processing the finance and then waiting for new vehicles to come in. Okay, so it's up to £6,000 for a van, £2,000 for a car. Individuals, so any staff that you have can do the same thing if they're on low income. That's now £27,000 if they're regularly coming in.
Yeah, is there anything for non-low income staff?
No, so it's very much linked to low income.
So if I had to visit one of my sites, then it's basically the company just pays the charge,
Yeah.
and I'm paid to come to work.
So I think what we're advising is, first of all, try and work out what the size of the problem is. So if you can try and speak to your staff, find out how many people actually have non-compliant vehicles. So it's often not as many as you might think. Probably the easiest way to reach compliance is to swap a diesel for a petrol car. Okay, it's not necessarily high cost.
Yeah, like for me personally, it's really affected me because I can't afford a new car and everything like that. But as a business, we get a lot of our staff come to pick things up to take to a new site, or come for a training, come for a meeting. So that's our only issue.
Yeah, so I think as a council, we can't just say we'll be able to solve all your problems. It is disruptive, and we do need people to sort of look at how they can change their behaviour. It's obviously not great timing with everything that's happening with the economy.
The timing with the, obviously, you know, the cost of living at the moment is bad timing, but we obviously appreciate it's got to be done. We just obviously need to support. A lot of our staff don't drive in, they either do park and ride or they do train and things like that. Our issue is us going between sites to sites and in for meetings, in for training. That's our main issue that is going to cost.
Yeah. So, Leanne, what would be great is if we could, so we're probably not going to be able to get your charges down to zero, but if we could look at some really creative options. So can we give you, you know, bus tickets? Can we look at getting you e-bikes? Can we look at the freight consolidation options and maybe give you a free trial and just see if any of this can chip away and start to help with some of the issues? And then accept there'll be some, you know, ongoing charges that you might still.
I tried to look at the Cycle to Work scheme, but I think I need to look at it again, because last time I looked at it, we weren't entitled because we don't. Do they still run it as you have to have somewhere to store your bikes? You have to offer bike storage for people to be able to offer it to your staff?
That's a good question, actually. I wasn't aware that was part of the criteria.
Yeah, it used to be, but I don't know if it's changed. So we're not able to offer it because we don't have somewhere for staff to store the bikes on site. But I don't know if that's changed. So that's something I need to look into again, unless someone knows the answer.
I know that was an issue if you were hiring or having a loan of the electric vehicles, that they definitely needed on-site storage and it needed to be out of the way. But Tom and I can pick that up and double check on that to give you less of a workload, James.
Yeah, great. And the good thing about the salary sacrifice scheme is it can actually reduce your corporate tax burden as well. So another option, the council has just, and the hospitals have just implemented a salary sacrifice scheme for low emission vehicles as well for staff.
Yeah, I know we're looking into getting some electric vehicles for the ones that are in and out, but it just all takes time, doesn't it, in the dates coming.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so sort of have a think. I mean, the other thing is we can potentially get you some car club credit as well, so you can then sign people up so they can use electric vehicles to pop in and out when they need to, so they're not having to rely on their own vehicles.
Thank you.
Okay, right, moving on. So we've said that you've obviously discussed, and it's another one from Leanne, you discussed about not allowing businesses to be invoiced, and you've got to be paying any penalty fines within 6 days. What's the reason behind this? Is there any option in the future for BCC looking at ways they can work with businesses? So there's an invoice option or a slightly longer payment, because if they've got a lot of staff, then is there anything you're potentially looking at with that, or is that's the way it is and we'll work around it?
Yeah, we're completely reliant on the government payment system, which is run by the DVLA. So all of the cities involved with this have actually been sort of lobbying to try and get the payment system improved, and it's not going to happen in time. So this is one of the big complaints we're getting from particularly fleet managers, and to be honest, I can understand the complaint. I guess the one benefit, if I'm going to try and put a silver lining on this, it really makes you engage with the clean air zone, and it makes sure that you're aware of all the costs that are coming through. But yeah, it will be an extra admin burden.
When the pollution levels are below required levels on a long-term basis, will the CAS zone be removed?
So the instruction is to get below 40 parts per million on NO2. We've got, you can have a look at the live air pollution levels. We then have to maintain that level for at least 12 months to prove that it's, you know, it's consistent and we can maintain that. The idea is because the fleet cleans up, then it should be that we keep it below that level. We have to reach that level on every single monitoring station that we have. So even if one road is above that level, it means we're still non-compliant. We haven't met our legal requirements. Once we have then met all those legal requirements, then one option is that the clean air zone can be removed. So as part of the project, we are planning, you know, what an exit plan looks like. The big question is, you know, politically, in a couple of years, what decision will be made, and whether that's a local or a national decision as well.
Right, Molly's asked that they've got lots of school groups coming in on buses. How will this affect them?
So we do have dedicated funding for buses. So there's about £2 million. We've spent about 1.5 million already upgrading buses. So the regional bus and coach fleet is already much cleaner now, or they've got orders in place. So now they tend to have been the larger bus companies have done that. So there are some options out there. If you're using lots of little niche companies, or if it's an owned bus, they might not be compliant, but you can still apply now, and potentially you can retrofit the engine, and that can be almost fully paid for. So we provide up to 17k for a retrofit, and an engine retrofit costs somewhere between 15 and 20. Yeah, if you have a look on the website, you can apply for funding. Does that answer the question, or was it more specific?
No, I think that covers it. Unless Molly's got anything further she wants to add to that. Okay. When will it be possible for companies to apply for a grant if they've got more than 5 vehicles?
So apply now, and we're sort of accepting previous applications. What we need to do is make sure that we secure the stretch funding from government first. So currently we have £15 million from government. We're able to apply for another 10 or 15 million. We need to demonstrate that we're spending enough to then get that funding. So as soon as we have confirmation from government, we can then start releasing the funding. What we can do is we're open to looking at if people want to put in pre-orders, we can then maybe have conversations about retrospective funding as well.
One from Catalina, which I think I can safely answer. So, do you get fined if you don't have a non-compliant vehicle and go to a clean air zone without realising? I'm presuming that's an absolute yes. It doesn't matter whether you realise or not. There will be enough signage. If you go in accidentally, you will incur a fine, and so you will get information about how to pay that, and you'll have to pay it within the 6 days that James has been talking about. One thing that I'll pick up whilst we're talking about the fines is what is the process for contesting a charge? Does it like a parking fine will increase after a certain amount of time if you've not paid it? If you put in an application to appeal that fine on a parking fine basis, that would be frozen until the outcome of the investigation. Is that the same with parking charge penalty charge notices for the CAS zone, or does that differ?
Yeah. So it's exactly the same as a parking charge or a charge for going through a bus gate. So the penalty charge notice charge is £120 from day one. However, if you pay it within, I think it's 14 days, you can then get a 50% discount. If you appeal it within that first 14 days, you freeze the clock on the potential discount until the appeal is resolved. Either it's cancelled or then it's upheld and you're asked to pay. If you still want to continue with an appeal, you can go up to the next level. So that goes to the Ombudsman. So you might have what you feel is really good evidence to say, I really should not be paying this for these reasons. And then you can get an independent adjudicator, which once they make their judgment, we always stick to it.
But as long as you pay within your first 6 days, then it doesn't then escalate to the 120. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, there are some other questions here that have been already covered. Rebecca has been putting some links in the chat, so I would encourage you to look at the chat for any further information on applying for grants or being able to look at the map zone areas in a bit more detail. Claire's asking how many applications for financial support have been received to date? What proportion have been successful?
So we've had about 7,000 applications. Quite a lot of those are duplicates. We've now issued something like 1,500 letters so that they can then speak to the finance companies to get the funding. There's another probably 2,500 people who have been contacted because they are eligible, but they need to provide some more evidence that they're entering the zone, that type of thing. The majority of people that have been rejected outright are individuals that earn more than 27,000. And as it stands, we're not going to be opening support to that group.
Are there going to be any information pamphlets provided for city centre hotels so that they can get information out to their guests? I mean, are there any sort of digital assets that the council are providing that hotels could maybe put on their websites potentially?
Yes, so we've got we have both. We have a digital toolkit which we can share, and then we can get we have thousands of leaflets. So basically, tell us how many you want, we'll get them delivered to you.
Okay. If you wanted for any of those or any of the BID businesses, if you want to contact myself or Tom, we could maybe coordinate that rather than James getting a million requests through for that. Is there any funding available for businesses to switch to a compliant courier rather than owning a car or a van?
Potentially, yeah. If basically get in touch with me, I'll put my contact details in, and we can talk through the options.
Okay. Okay, we've covered the. Just trying to see what else we've got in here. For a city centre hotel, considering the cost of living, what option will there be for our team members, considering in our business recruiting is already a challenge? I think you've pretty much already covered that with the available grants. I don't think you've got any more, unless you've got anything else to say on that one, James.
Yeah, I guess we also have the sustainable travel options. We've got park and ride, but I accept that, particularly for the sort of later shift work, it starts becoming more tricky.
You know where we're at with the personal diesel grant? Leanne put in an application about 6 weeks ago, but hasn't heard anything back because I suspect you've got an awful lot to get through at the moment with grant applications.
Yeah, I'll look into that one specifically just to see where it is. We'll get you a response today.
Okay. Couple that came in prior to the webinar starting. I'm aware that the DVLA are still in the process of doing some updates on the site. Pretty much all of it's done, but to make sure that people can check their car registration. Is there a deadline by which the DVLA have said that the website will be 100% up to date and everybody who checks their car registrations will know 100% that they are actually compliant or non-compliant?
We'll know, because we're already live in Birmingham and Bath. So the fact that they're still updating it, yeah, it's causing small amounts of problems. We are talking about a tiny minority, and it tends to be slightly more obscure vehicles, which they kind of missed off their initial list, I think.
Yeah, I just didn't know whether the DVLA were actually going to tell us, give us some actual detail, which would have been nice, and put themselves down to a time limit. But
there is one other nuance. I don't know if it impacts anyone in this room, but we've been speaking to Visit West a lot. It's about international vehicles. So international vehicles, currently they're not on the checker. So we are treating them as non-compliant unless they register directly with the DVLA in advance. So that's particularly things like European coaches coming over.
Is there a link you could potentially put in the chat for people to register vehicles, possibly, because there might be, as we've got a couple of hotels here, that may well be relevant for them.
Yeah, so I think, Becca, that's just the standard vehicle checker. I think there's an option on there.
Okay. I think we've just about covered everything that we've got here at the moment. Has anybody else got any questions that they would like answering at the moment?
Can I just ask, if you put a registration in now and it says it's fine, you know, it will be free of charge, is that registration liable to change? Like, are they going to be changing it?
So in almost all cases, it's completely accurate. What I would advise you to do, if you're on the borderline of, so if it's petrol and it's borderline 2004, 2005, if you check your V5C form, it should say what Euro class the vehicle is. It's all done on Euro class. If for any reason you think the checker is wrong, you can contact the DVLA and they can look into it. That's often what's causing the update, where someone has got in touch and they've double checked it. We have seen a couple of instances where people with a car from sort of 2001 is showing as compliant, and they definitely should be non-compliant, but then there's no incentive for them to contact the DVLA to say, please charge me for my vehicle. So there's a couple of very small issues there.
Yeah, so if if I put the registration in and it shows that it's compliant, and because I've just bought another car because of my car being an issue, if I take a screenshot of that and they change it next week, where do I stand?
Well, so it's a good idea. Take a screenshot if you're concerned, contact the DVLA. If for any reason you do get a penalty charge notice, that would be part of your appeal, to say, this is the dated screenshot when I checked.
But is there anything to say that they can't change it once it's on there? Or I would assume in small writing somewhere they're protected, that they can change it at any time.
Yeah, and the only reason they're changing it is because if they just hadn't captured all the details. So the way they've created this database is they've built it up model by model. They've contacted all the manufacturers to work out when the Euro class came in for all the different cars, because a lot of manufacturers started introducing the new Euro standard well ahead of the deadline. So it's very messy, all of this, but it is all about the Euro class standard. So if you check your V5C, if you've got Euro 4 petrol or above, or Euro 6 diesel or above, then you're fine.
Okay, and it will say that on the document?
Yeah, it should do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Could I ask a question before we go?
Sam, carry on.
Hi, Paula. So I have a very small business. There's only a small handful of staff. We just use one vehicle for collections and deliveries of client materials. But the car itself, it's actually registered to myself as a director and not to the business. We've never actually bothered, just because it's more hassle than it's worth, quite frankly. But obviously this is a diesel car and it's non-compliant, and almost all of our clients are actually in the centre of Bristol, whereas our business itself is just on the edge of the outskirts of the clean air zone. So my question is really, what does any support exist to replace that car, given it's used mainly by the business but registered with the director and not the business itself?
Yes, so what we'll do, we would check on the company's house to check that if you're a named director, that matches the name on the V5C form. If you're telling us it's business use, then we can accept that as effectively as a business vehicle. Okay,
great. So how should I apply for that? Through the website, I guess, as the
go to the website on the financial page, then just put any details on there in the expression of interest form.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, like I said at the beginning, we've recorded this, so we will be sending a copy of this recording out to all of the attendees that are here at the moment and anybody else who requests it. I think that's all for now. Like I said earlier on, please do check the chat section and pick up any of the links. Rebecca's been putting quite a few links in here to various bits to answer questions as we've gone along. And Tom I will pick up anything further if you want to. We're all here to support you. If you want to ask any questions, then you're absolutely welcome to pass them through to myself or Tom. Or you could go direct to James over at the council, and we'll get this chat sent over. The chat will be part of the recording, so we'll get that sent over as soon as we can. Okay, thanks James, thanks everybody else, have a lovely day.